Thanks for SQL Server Path for giving this opportunity. And of course, this is my first session that I am giving in SQL Server Path. Even though our community, the SQL Server Path is basically for SQL Server, but what we are going to deliver is it's related to the database or SQL Server or any of the database platforms, either it is SQL Server or Oracle or any other, RDBMS or database. So the today's session is a kind of a very introductory session. If someone really who wants to start learning what is meant by data modeling, how can I do my own data model, how can I make sure that whatever the data model that I'm creating is perfect and it will work fine. So it's a kind of introduction to data modeling. So about me, as Nabil mentioned, I'm working as a database architect. Actually, I'm very much interested in terms of database design and data modeling, and also I've been in data migration and database development. As a data modeler, I'm using tools like Power Designer from Sybase, Microsoft Visio, and also I'm using SQL Server for implementing the data models. Let's look at the agenda that what we have today that lined up for us. Basically, I'll start with why do we model the data, and then we will see what is mean by data model, what is the definition of data modeling, and if we develop a data model, we are targeting whom. So whom will get benefit of data model, and then when should we build the data model. So basically, when you are dealing with the data models, so when you have to build the data model, and who are all will involved in data modeling or data model design, and also where to start and how to build the data model. And at the end, based on the time constraints, I'll try to give a demonstration using Sybase Power Designer, and then we will have our question and answer session. So basically, our agenda today is just uncover the questions which are related to data model, why, how, where, when, all of those kind of stuff. And as I mentioned, this is I have mentioned in the agenda as session 1. So most probably you may think, okay, this means there will be more sessions related to this data model. Of course, this is my plan also. Today's session is basically giving an introduction kind of stuff to data model, so that you will have a fundamental basic idea about data model. So based on your suggestions and feedback, and also I believe this session will be recorded and posted in our website, sqlserverpath.org. So based on your feedback, maybe I will go in detail about so how can we take further sessions. So this session, who are all will get benefit in terms of data modeling. Anyone who is working as a project manager, they will get benefit of this session in terms of scope and quality management. So whenever they do the scope management for the product or the project, they will get benefit of this session, today's session. And also anyone who involved in design or architecture phase of the product or the solution, they will also get a benefit. Maybe he is a member of the designing team, or he is a solution architect, or he is just working as a member in the design team. They will get benefit of this session. And most importantly, the programmers who are involved in coding the business logic, and DBA in terms of improving the performance of a database environment, and of course this session will help them a lot. So from this session, the takeaway will be a complete understanding of data modeling, And then just, I will create a data model that will be your first data model, or it will give an idea like, where to start, how to use the tools. So basically, like, people, they are using Microsoft Visio at a small scale. And if you are talking about an enterprise environment, you may go for Power Designer, and I hope many of you are familiar with Erwin. So there are many tools, but in this session, I'll try to demonstrate from Sybase Power Design. So let us start our session. Yeah, this is the question. Maybe it's not related to our topic, but just I want to mention it. What the most successful people do before breakfast. I believe most of us even don't take breakfast, and we don't give importance to the breakfast. And what are the things we're supposed to do even before the breakfast, which are basically for a healthier life. Some of the things that you see or your point of view, maybe it's something negligible, or you don't give much importance to it, but really it is going to help a lot for your health and wealth. So if you have time, just look at this article. Why I'm putting this, it's mostly related, instead of breakfast, just you replace in that article with the data model. Because what I'm seeing, throughout my experience with the different companies and organizations, most of the companies who are involved, like product development companies, they are giving much importance to data model. Whereas some of the companies or people who are really involved in projects, they don't give much importance to data model, and what they are facing at the end, due to maintenance, if they want to go for re-engineering, they are facing a lot of problems because they don't take care of their data modeling aspect. So just, this particular slide is giving us a thought, saying like, whatever that for your point of view, maybe it's something small, but it's going to give you a huge result. So our first step in our agenda is to understand why do we model the data. Okay, so basically, like, when you build a house, how you will start with building a house? There will be a blueprint, right? For example, if you want to get a house or office, something like this, so most of you will be familiar with this kind of blueprint, which will give an idea to the architect. He will create this blueprint and give to the contractor. So based on the constraints, or based on this diagram, based on this drawing, they are going to make a house or office. The same thing, like, that we can assume as the importance of having or needed for the data model. So in terms of modeling for information solutions or for any product, there are many kind of modeling, like, business process modeling, object-oriented modeling, conceptual data modeling, and physical data modeling. Many people, in my experience, like, they are seeing modeling is something like documentation, or they are seeing like, it's a bottleneck to rapid development, or they say like, it's too expensive. But modeling is not just documentation. It is going to create a physical database for you. It is not going to be a bottleneck to your development. It can actually accelerate the development and can significantly reduce your maintenance. So in the world of modeling, we have all this kind of modeling, like a BPM, object-oriented model, where you will have your UML modeling, and then, like, what we are going to discuss here, conceptual data modeling and physical data modeling. So here, basically, like, it's given an idea about, like, what is mean by modeling, what they are doing it in modeling, who are all involved in this. It's just an overview of what are all the data modeling that we have. So at the end, computer-aided software engineering tools, which are basically used to create all these models. If you take, for example, Microsoft Visio, it has its own limitation in terms of modeling. If you take, for example, the Sybase Power Designer, it has a capability to create your base model in your business process model, and then group all the related models or related models which are required for your product development. So when I say why do we require data model, it requires of course justification, and in terms of return on investment, when I say we need data model, even at the management level or at the member who are involved in development, they need some justification why we need data model. First thing is in terms of justification, I put it will give understanding. It will give understanding about the requirements. I read an article if you write a text or business requirement in terms of as a textual requirement, and if you at the same time if you produce a diagram or a picture, I think the people will prefer, and they can easily understand when you picturize your requirements in terms of data. And of course, it will build a more robust design. Yes, it will give a greater consistency across projects, because when you take a project or a product, it contains many modules, many parts. How you are going to integrate all this stuff? How you are going to consistently improve the design aspect or development aspect of the project? So data model will play an important role in that aspect. Of course, many of the developers who are involved in developing information solutions, whenever they go for some kind of rework, I know they face a lot of problems because the lack of information. If they have a kind of data model segregated by their modules or projects, it is very easy for them to address the issues. It is very easy for them to rework the entire project. In terms of return on investment, of course, it will improve the data quality, because when you model the data, you have quality points. Okay, when I save my data, what are the requirements for saving this particular data? Because business needs or business makes decisions based on data, and so your data needs to be in a high quality, so that you can produce any kind of reports or any kind of information which are valid information to your solution. Reduced data movement. I see a lot of people when they distribute the data, if they have a data model, it is easy for them to plan their distribution. So how they are going to distribute the data across their product, across their solutions. Of course, the reduced maintenance this is the main thing that I am targeting in terms of data model, because basically, any project, if you have experience on involving different projects, just if you think what is the time that you spend more when you, especially when you maintain the product, when you manage the project. So the lack of information related to data. They want to know a complete picture of what is their data, where it is storing, how it is storing. So if they have this information as a model, it will be very helpful for them, and then it will reduce the maintenance cost. Of course, the greater use of assets. This means I want to improve, or I want to create some other product which is similar to this. So if I have a data model, so I can think of, okay, how can I reuse the data model, or how can I reuse the data instead of having duplicate data or redundant data in two places. No, last but not the least is the high performance. If you have the data model, so you can plan your performance criteria. So what are the end results that you are expecting? So how can I design my data model according to the requirement in terms of performance? So those were the reasons that why do we need to model the data. Now just, let us look at some of the definitions or to understand what is the data model. I have seen in my experience, like, I have asked many people, what is mean by a data model? They will say, like, it's a kind of diagram where you show all the tables and then some relationship between these tables. This is what they say as data model. Believe me, that is not actually a data model. Most of the people who are involved in developing or in designing, they are seeing what as data model is the database design, which is the physical design of the database. But when you talk about data model, you need to understand what are the perspectives that you need to put on data model. So understanding data model, this definition gives, of course, as I said, it will capture the structure and operation of an organization, of a product. And this book, particularly, like, data modeling made simple, which was my first book, or like, maybe before 5 or 6 years that I bought this book. And now they have the second edition of this book, which is really helpful for you to understand what is meant by data modeling. So according to this book, they said data modeling is nothing but some set of techniques and activities that you need to carry out in order to capture the structure and operation of an organization. And according to the Wikipedia, it's also like, I like the definition that they posted. It's data model is acting as a bridge between functional people and technical people. So when you say data model, when you sit with your business people, the business people will understand in their perspective, like what are all the requirements and how it's been satisfied in your solution through the data model. But at the same time, when you present the data model to your developers or to your programmers, they will understand, like, okay, how do I write my codes? So what are all the places where I have to reuse my codes? Okay, how to store the data? So basically, the data model is a bridge between functional and technical people. And you can say, as I mentioned in the previous slides, it's a kind of blueprint for you or for your developers to develop the applications. And you can use data model as a plan to schedule your development even. So data model, in order to understand, data model is something like, it has its own levels, like high level, medium level, and low level. When you say high level, we are talking about conceptual. Business people, when they look at the data model, they understand, okay, my requirements are satisfied through this data model. When developers, when they look at the data model, they understand, yes, I know how to develop my applications. So basically, as a definition to data model, you can say the first point as it captures the structure and operation of an organization or a solution. And also the data model is using as a bridge between functional and technical people. So when we talk about what is meant by data model, there are many types of models. Like, they say flat model, hierarchical model, network model, relational model, object relational model, star schema, and many more, many more. You will find it even in the Wikipedia site, or even if you search for data model types, there are many types of data model. But what we are going to discuss throughout this series or throughout this session is about relational model, where you are going to depend on relational database management system or object relational model, because nowadays, as we are developing object-oriented applications, object-oriented, service-oriented architecture, where they are basically like, start with the object model. So the object relational model or relational model is the main target that we are going to discuss throughout this series. And if possible, like, if based on the feedback and the interest, the star schema, which is the model used for data warehousing, that we will also discuss. Yeah, this is the main thing that I want to tell you about data model. So hereafter, when someone refer you or someone asks you to define a data model or to design a data model, you have to ask them, what level of data model they require. Because basically, data model have three perspectives: conceptual data model, logical data model, and physical data model. As I said, conceptual data model is something, the name itself is telling you it is mostly business oriented. Like, the business people, when they look at the model, they can easily understand. When you say logical data model, it gives an elaborate idea in between how you are going to implement, what are the requirements that you captured as a concept. And physical data model is something how you are going to implement the data model. That is called physical data model. So basically what we are going to see is a relational model in terms of conceptual, logical, and physical. So this is a pyramid that I have designed to understand what is meant by data modeling. If you look at here, like, any product development, it starts with the business model where they come up with the business model. Okay, what is our business model? What are the requirements in terms of business? How we are going to distribute our business? So it will be the top high level design that they will start up with. And then the solution architect or whoever, like, involved in terms of understanding the business model, they will come up with the enterprise model where they are talking about objects, most probably, like, these are all the models which are using UML, Unified Modeling Language, diagrams where they design their enterprise model. Then the below three layers that what we are talking, like, conceptual data model, logical data model, and physical data model. So conceptual data model here that I have mentioned, entities, attributes, relations, don't panic with these terminologies, because I'm going to explain you in detail about what are the terminologies which we need to learn in order to build a data model. So here, if you see here, the data modeling pyramid, at the top is the abstract level of modeling, and the bottom one is the detailed level of modeling. Here, normally in a normal development environment, you will start with the business model, and then you will drill down to enterprise model, conceptual model, logical model, and then the physical model. And in the case of, like, like you are reverse engineering. The terminology is reverse engineering in the sense, I have the end product, so I have the end database. Now I have to build a business model. I need to know how they build, what are the things that they did in their implementation. So you have to reverse engineer, and then you will reach the abstract level. So then now we need to know for whom we are developing the data model, who all will get benefit of this data model. First, project managers. Okay, project managers, what they will take away from a data model is basically the scope management and quality management. When you say scope management, when someone, when they develop the data model, the project manager who knows what is their limitation, or what is the scope of the project, or what is the scope of the product, they can easily manage the scope. Like, for example, when they are delivering a healthcare solution, and the data model is just, they put an enterprise data model which covers all the area. Now the project manager can look at the data model and decide, how can I manage the scope? Okay, when I go for this entity, I'll say, okay, this is not in our scope. So the data model will use as a scope management tool for the project managers, and also it will use as in terms of quality management. Because when you say quality management, what are the quality criteria that you agreed in a project or in a product to deliver? So you can cover as a project manager, a data model will work as a scope management on the quality management tool. For a business specialist or analyst, yes, they have a set of requirements, and they have analyzed all the requirements. And when they look at the data model, they easily understand, okay, how my requirements are going to be satisfied in terms of data. And of course, architects, they are the one who build the data model. So for them, they will use the data model for their solution architecture, and they can use the data model to build their database. For developers, of course, like as I mentioned, it's a bridge between technical people and functional people. Here, the developers, they will use the data model in order to generate their queries, in order to generate their CRUD operation requirements or any data definition language. They can plan for it through, when they look at the data model. And for DBA, yeah, they can just, manage or they can set the performance benchmarks based on a data model. And data migration, I believe most of the data migration projects will take time if they don't have a data model. Most of the migration projects even end up with, a negative result, or end up with, failures, because they don't address the data model requirements in their project, or whenever they are doing the data migration, the end product or the database, what they're going to migrate, does not have a proper data model. So DBA can get benefit of a data model when they set the performance criteria or performance improvements, and when they plan for their data migration. Yeah, here, when should we build the data model? Okay, this is one of the important steps that, we have to understand. So when we are going to build this data model. As you know, in a normal development life cycle, either it is waterfall or traditional or agile development, you have the phases of development, starting from the requirement, and then there will be analysis, design, and you will develop the solution, and you will deploy it, and it's going for continuous monitoring and maintenance. And then, if at all there's some re-engineering required, again they will go in a loop. So when we have to develop the data model, it is exactly during or before your design phase of your solution or of your product. So that is what we call as conceptual. So the conceptual data model is a prerequisite for your designing. And once you do the design, what you are going to deliver to the development is the physical data model. So conceptual, when you are going to develop, after analysis or before start your design phase or during the design phase, you will do your conceptual data model as a deliverable to the developer or to the development department or members. What you are going to deliver is the physical data model. And of course, when they do the re-engineering or when they go for enhancements, again they have to go through their conceptual, logical, and then physical. So basically, when you see a data model, it fits in the design range from the requirement, analysis, and design. Here is the area, or this is the time where we are going to develop our data model. Okay, who will create the data model? Here, if you look at the diagram, okay, who is going to involve? You see, some of the roles here that I mentioned. Excuse me. Yeah, for example, I'm sorry. Pointer. Okay, here we have a business specialist, and we have data modeler. Here we have database designer. Maybe here this is a DBA or database designer and data modeler. Okay, so basically here I put a data modeler. Most of the organizations they call database designer or architect, database architect, who is going to involve in developing the data model. So this diagram will give an idea about what are the things which are required when I develop my data model. Here, if you see, for example, we have built a conceptual data model and design logical data model and design physical data model. So what are the inputs and outputs that we are going to give? In order to build a conceptual data model, data modeler requires the information requirements. So basically, it may be a requirement document or a requirement or business rules. So they will take these business rules, and he will come up with a conceptual data model, and it will be, or it should be, reviewed by the business specialist. Here, what I'm telling is, like, as I mentioned earlier, the data model is going to work as a bridge, or it's going to be a bridge between functional people and technical people. So once the data modeler design the conceptual data model, it will be reviewed by the business specialist. And then the data modeler will take the conceptual data model with the platform specification in order to design the logical data model. Of course, in next few slides, I'm going to tell you a comparison of how you are going to compare a conceptual data model with a logical data model, and how you are going to compare a logical data model with a physical data model. But keep in mind, when I say data model, you have to keep in mind data model have three perspectives. It has conceptual data model, logical data model, and physical data model. And who will develop the data model? Basically, a database designer, we can call a data modeler, and we need a business specialist because he needs to review and ensure that the data model is going to give or satisfy all my requirements. And also DBA, he will involve in physical database design because there are some set of performance requirements, so he has to ensure that your physical implementation will take care of all the requirements. So who are all will involve in developing the data model is a business specialist, data modeler, database designer, maybe DBA. Okay, now where to start? Okay. So this is this is what I am planning for session 2, because in order to design data model, you have to understand some of the data modeling terminologies. Because here when you talk about the skill set of a data modeler, basically data modeling is an art actually. You have to know some of the notations basically, because there are many standard notations. As you can see in object model or UML, it has so many shapes. It has, like, for example, they say the activity diagram, UML sequence diagram. So each has its own shapes and notations. Same thing here, you have, like, in terms of data modeling, there are some standards like IDFX standard or SSADM standard or UML standard. You have to know that the notations for data modeling, and you have to know the steps that are involved in designing and building a data model. And data modeling tools, here what I want to mention, when I say data modeling tools, the tool will not help you to build a data model, because the skill set required for a data modeler or data model is soft skills. Like, you have to think of how you are going to plot the data model. Tools will help you how to do. So tools will not build your data model. You have to build your data model. The tools will facilitate how to build your data model and how you are going to present the data model to different parties. So in that area, the tools will be very helpful for you. So as a deliverables of data modeling, so it will have model diagrams, data dictionaries. Basically, data dictionary means it is going to give entities and attributes definitions and some documentation. So this is the main requirement for a data modeler in order to build a data model. So if you want to start developing data models, you have to know some of the terminologies. What is meant by, for example, normalization? What is meant by cardinality? How I am going to understand the relationship between two entities? So how I am going to plot all this in a diagram? So all these things you have to know in order to start develop a data model. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, data model has three perspectives. So when you want to start data model development, you should start with conceptual data model. So conceptual data model, it will identify the highest level of relationship between different entities Or you can say conceptual data model is something like, you can read from the diagram. Like for example, an employee will have or may have one or more dependents. So when you put this in a picture, the business specialist or the business people, they can easily understand what you are going to build as a data model. So this is what we call as conceptual data model. And the logical data model and conceptual data model, some of the development environment I have seen as one data model, because conceptual is something high level and logical is something like, you are going to detail each entities and you are going to mention all the attributes and you are going to set the normalization level. So this is what you are going to do in the logical data model. So that's why I mentioned sometime they combine the logical data model and conceptual data model as a single model. At the end, what we are going to deliver, or the end result, is going to be a physical data model where you are going to implement the database. So here you have to take the inputs such as like, database management system specific inputs. For example, if you are going to implement a solution in SQL Server, so you have to think of, okay, what are the things or how I can use the technology of Microsoft SQL Server in order to implement this data model, which will be resulted out as a physical data model. So here, when you say logical data model or conceptual data model, it is platform independent. You don't know how you are going to implement this data model, or you don't care about how we are going to implement this data model. So physical data model will take care of the technology implementation. Okay, how I am going to get use of the technology in order to implement this data model. So this comparison will give us an idea about what is meant by conceptual, logical, and physical data model. If you look here, like, in conceptual, basically I'm thinking of what are the major entities and how it's related to each other. This is simply conceptual data model, because when you present a conceptual data model to the business people, they are seeing the data model in their terminologies, in their own terminologies, like entities and relationships. And the logical data model is something, as a bridge between conceptual and physical. Like here you are going to elaborate that what you have designed in conceptual by defining all the attributes, or what are the keys for each entity, how its foreign keys are going to be related. When you implement this in physical database, what you are getting is tables, columns, foreign keys, primary keys, constraints, unique constraints, the data types, indexes. All these things will be carried out in the physical data model. So this is the comparison chart between conceptual, logical, and physical data models. Okay, how to build the data model. Okay, here we are going to get use of the case tools. As I mentioned earlier, you can use Microsoft Visio, Sybase Power Designer, or CA Airwin. So these are the tools will help you to plot the data model. I will not say case tools will help you to design the data model, because the designing data model is a kind of soft skill for the data modeler. So what tools will do? Tools will empower you to quickly build the database, and also tools will especially helpful when you are going to reverse engineer the database. Here reverse engineer means, like for example, you have been assigned for a migration project, so you need to understand the existing database structure in order to design your migration solution. So now you are going to reverse engineer. Believe me, tools will play a very important role in reverse engineer your database, because at the end, this tool is going to produce a physical data model based on the implementation of the database. And also, like, tools will helpful, like, when you are developing multiple databases. Like for example, you may segregate the databases by your modules or by schema. So here, tools will play an important role to build your data model. And version control, yes, of course, when you are going for iteration in development, tools will play an important role to manage the versions. And also, some of the enterprise case tools provide such capability. Like for example, you can just accommodate all your modeling requirement and solution in one solution file. For example, the Power Designer, Sybase Power Designer, you can build your business process model, you can build your object-oriented model, you can build your data model, the physical implementation, everything as just, as one product solution. Then you can synchronize between or compare between two different models. So these are the areas where we are going to get benefit of case tools. Okay, now we are going to see a small demonstration. Actually, we are going to build a data model based on some of the case study or based on a requirement. Okay, this is the requirement. Just have some time to understand this paragraph. Jan Smith catches the cold, and what he suspects is a flu virus. He makes an appointment with his family doctor, who confirms his diagnosis. Okay, so the doctor prescribes an antibiotic and nasal decongestant tablets. Jan leaves the doctor's office and rushes to the drugstore. By the time, the pharmacist packages the medication and types the labels for pill bottles. The label includes information about customer, the doctor who prescribed the drug itself, when to take it, how often, what is the content of the pill, the number of refills, expiration date, and the date of purchase. So what we are going to do now is we are going to develop data model. We are going to develop a data model and the ER diagram based on this requirement. Okay, so this is what I was saying. When you read the previous slide as a text, that what you need, here it's a diagram, the same requirement. This is what we call as a label. Normally, the pharmacist will paste on your medicines. So we are going to build a data model in order to satisfy these requirements. Let me just go out of this PowerPoint. Okay. Nabil, can you see this screen, Power Designer screen?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Okay. So this is a case tool which we are going to use in order to build our data model. Here, just when I say create new model, as I mentioned, case tool will help you to plot your model. As you can see here, when I say new model, there are many level of modeling. You may remember in one of the slides, I have mentioned the world of modeling as business process model, object-oriented model, conceptual model, and physical model. Here, for example, see these case tools support to build your business process modeling, information modeling, application modeling, technology, even you can plan your requirement modeling. Okay, for our subject, what we are going to do, we are going to create a conceptual data model. Let's say, okay. So this is the area where I am going to place my entities. So your first step in data model is to identify the entities. If I remember, in my case study, I have mentioned about a patient, about a doctor, and I think I mentioned about a pharmacy, and then prescription, so and then label. So basically, these are the entities. So here I'll say, okay, this is my entity, which I call as patient. And then this is the entity which I'll call as prescription. And then I'll create one more entity. I will call it as doctor. Okay. So this is the first step to identify the required entities. Then you have to relate each entity to each other. Like for example, a patient and prescription. What is their relationship? Okay, patient will have a prescription, and doctor will prescribe the prescription. So this is how you are going to create the conceptual data model. In order to just to save our time, I built this conceptual data model that I'll show you. Okay. See here. Now, when you present this to your business people, they can easily understand from this conceptual data model, doctor prescribe prescription. If there is a prescription, it is prescribed by a doctor. Similarly, what is the relationship between a patient and prescription? Patient has prescription. If there is a prescription, it belongs to, or the prescription is of a patient. So this is the conceptual model. And if you see here, for example, the relationship between prescription and drug is many to many. So this is what we call it as a relationship. And as you can see here, there are something called 0, n, here, 0, 1. This is what we call it as cardinality. Like how many occurrences that I may have, n number of occurrences or one. Like for example, if you see the difference relationship between prescription and patient, patient will have many prescriptions, or prescription. If there is a prescription, it should be belongs to one patient. This is what you are seeing in terms of conceptual data model. And there is a relationship between prescription and drug is many. What is mean by that? Okay, a drug will have, or a drug belongs to more than one prescription. For example, the same antibiotic will be prescribed for many people. So this drug will appear in many prescriptions. At the same time, if I have a prescription, this prescription will have one or more drugs. As we have seen in the case study, the doctor prescribed an antibiotic and nasal congestion solution. So it contains 2 drugs. So the relationship between prescription and drug is many to many. So this is what we call as a conceptual data model. Now, when you look at the logical data model, yes, this is the logical data model. When I say logical data model, the difference between conceptual and logical is more detailed of a conceptual data model. Here also, you are seeing the same relationship, like for example, between prescription and drug, the relationship is still many to many. And for example, here you have the cardinality. For example, the relationship between patient and prescription, patient will have 0 or n number of prescription, but if there is a prescription, it should belongs to a patient, it should be prescribed by a doctor. This will decide the quality of your data. This is what I mentioned. The data model will act as a quality measurement tool. See what I'm telling here. If I design a prescription, one of the requirements inside the prescription is the patient name or the patient identification and the doctor identification. So I should know this prescription belongs to whom and this prescription prescribed by which doctor. So you cannot save this prescription model or prescription entity inside the database unless you provide this information. So this is how the data model is used in our development environment. Just I'm going to demonstrate. As I mentioned, this is the logical data model. The interesting part is when we go for physical data model, just I will show you how we are going to create a physical data model based on this logical data model. If we go to the tools, I'll say, okay, generate physical data model based on this logical data model. So when you say generate physical data model, See here, when I say generate new physical data model, it's asking you, okay, now you reached the deployment stage or you reached the implementation stage where you have to mention what is your DBMS. Basically, all case tools or most of the enterprise case tools support all versions of your available database management systems. For example, here in our example, I will choose my DBMS is Microsoft SQL Server 2008. So based on the current logical model, I am going to create a physical data model. One of the important points that I want to mention here is just look at the relationship between prescription and drug. It's many to many, right? The relationship between prescription and drug is many to many. Okay. Now, when I create my physical data model, how it's going to be represented there? When I say okay, see here, this is the beauty of case tools when you generate the physical data model. Now, this is what we call as a database design or a physical data model. Here, see, the case tool automatically decides we need a middle table because the relationship between prescription and drug is many to many. So I have to have a middle table which will be automatically created by the case tool. Like if you go for Microsoft Visio, they don't have the capability of implementing many to many at conceptual level. So basically what you are going to do is you are going to break many to many in terms of one to many and from here one to many. But don't get panic about all these data models. What I have demonstrated you is just an idea that you have to get what is meant by data model, how we are going to use the data model, at what stage the data model will be very helpful for us. So based on your feedback about this session, based on the suggestions, maybe I want to take a series of sessions about data modeling terminologies like normalization, how we are going to normalize our database, and what are the different aspects that we need to know in order to develop a data model. So here, back to the slides. Okay, so this is the case study that we have seen now. I know, sky is the limit for searching anything in the internet. You will get an answer. But for my understanding, if you visit these two sites, it will give a basic idea about data modeling. The databaseanswers.org, they have a huge number of sample data models. They have data models for finance-related domain. They have data models for pharmacy-related domain. But it is not a final data model, but this site will give an idea about, okay, what are the basic entities that you have to have in certain domain. They have a huge number of samples in this site, and Erwin site, it has too many white papers, which is telling us the importance of database design and modeling. Okay, we are at the end of our session. This is the time for you to raise your questions. If you have any questions, you can just type your questions and send to me, or you can raise right now because Nabil is there. He can get your questions and send to me so that I can answer these questions. And as I mentioned, the entire session is being recorded, and we will publish this in our website sqlserverpath.org, and we welcome your suggestions, your feedback about this session. Thank you very much for your time.